Okay, so welcome everyone. Welcome to this latest episode of the Conservation Careers podcast. And today, joining me in this kind of fairly normal format now, I guess, for the podcast, our friends and co-hosts, we've got Dr. Fernando Mateos-González from Bioblogía, or Nando, as he's sort of fondly known to us all. And also we've got Dr. Stephanie Schuttler from the world of fancy scientists. Careers advisors, assemble.
Hello, everyone.
How are you doing, team? Good to see you. Thanks for joining as always. This is episode 3 of our kind of little pilot format for the podcast. I feel like we almost need a name for this. I keep calling it a pilot, and there's a certain point where it's not a pilot anymore. It's just like
we'll have to think of a name.
Yeah, maybe we can have like a chat around that one day, or put it out to people. If you've got a good name idea for this, there is a kind of conservation happy hour out there already, which is a great show. That's a good title. We're not going to reuse it, but something like that, it sounds kind of good to us. So in terms of format, what we tend to do in this podcast with the three of us is kind of pick a topic, a theme, a question, and kind of go deep on it and kind of discuss it and share our thoughts and ideas and opinions. And we're going to do that today as normal. We're also going to start just doing like a quick, what's been going on bit at the top to kind of give us a bit more structure. And at the end, we usually finish with kind of a quick careers tip as well. So if you're here kind of looking for careers advice, the three of us have got lots of advice to share. So we're going to kind of give some quick tips about that too. So that's the structure. So maybe let's start off with what's been going on. It's been a couple of weeks, or maybe a little bit more since we spoke. Nando, maybe I can kind of throw over to you at the start, because I know you've been out kind of chasing ground squirrels and lots of other stuff. You're a busy guy. So
Yes.
what's been going on in your world, my friend?
Well, it's been lots of squirrels, and mostly that took all my fieldwork time. It's a fun time because it's when we put something like 70 camera traps in a long line across a rural airport, one of these leisure airports where private people fly their little toys. And so that involves going there very late in the afternoon, spend the whole evening setting up the camera traps, then doing another running in the field, turning them on so that they don't run out of battery or SD card space, and then letting them run in the morning. And then the next step will be for me with the computer to try and do some science fiction, machine learning stuff with some grant we have with Microsoft to let a program detect where the squirrels are and help us count them. So it's quite fun. It's a lot of running in the field, but also then scratching your head trying to fix this science fiction thing. And then in 2 weeks, I'm going to the north to my beloved birds. We are going to study flycatchers. So it's this time of the year when I go back to my PhD studies with birds. I become an ornithologist again.
Oh, that sounds. What's really nice is you're still getting out and having that connection to the field and the field work elements, which is kind of really important. It's why most of us got into conservation in the first place. You're still out there mid-career, still doing that, enjoying it, and sort of thriving within that. For those who don't know much about the ground squirrel stuff and you're doing, like, what's the overall goal? Why are you taking pictures of squirrels at an airport?
So this species is critically endangered now or at least endangered in the Czech Republic. And we are trying to monitor their numbers as a first step in conservation and see what is influencing and how they are growing or going down in different regions and what is happening with them. But they are ground dwellers, so it's a bit tricky to count them because you see one up and then another one goes down, and it's a bit of a game to count them. So we devised this more technical way to count them all at the same time through cameras, and then we get pictures of a certain moment and all the cameras are synchronized, so then we can know how many are out there at a given time instead of having 200 million ornithologists with binoculars trying to count.
Get the computer to do the work for you. That sounds cool. That sounds really fun. Yeah. And camera traps, you got loads of experience with camera traps, Stephanie. What's been What's been going on in your world the last couple of weeks?
I haven't been doing camera traps. I've actually been talking to people a lot. I have been trying to figure out where I can help people most in this career. So I've been just doing, I put out this call for just like people who are entering this career at different stages and what they're struggling with, if they wanted to chat with me. And I just couldn't believe how many responses I got. So I've already interviewed 50 people. And it's just been really interesting to hear from people at all different levels and what their biggest problems are. Wow. So I've been doing a lot of talking to people and a lot of Zoom interviews. Nice.
Great response and a lot of Zooming. Yeah. Have you enjoyed it?
Yeah.
Yeah, it's been most common.
Finding a job. That's and I plan on doing a podcast about the results. But yeah, so either finding a job in terms of like getting the job, like standing out in a sea of applicants, or also a lot of people talked about just like jobs not being posted, like a lot of jobs being posted internally, and it's like actually hard to find the job. And another big one was also just like they had a job as a vision, but not knowing exactly how to get there. And like somebody mentioned that they listened to the Ologies podcast and they hear about all these cool scientists, and it's like, well, how do you get from point A to B? So those are probably the big ones.
Yeah, it's really interesting insights. Yeah. And I guess, when do you stop them with that? Are you saying 50 is enough? Are you going to keep going? Do you feel you've got enough information?
I do have some more scheduled. I definitely have enough information, but I basically responded to everyone on the post, and I only did one post. I thought I was going to have to post like multiple times throughout the week, so I only had one post. And so I basically followed up with people who responded to the post.
Nice. Well, we'll look forward to listening to the results on the podcast when they're all ready.
Yeah, it's super interesting.
Yeah. Cool. Okay. And actually, yeah, I guess from my side, like what's been going on too. I guess in the last couple of weeks, the main thing that we've been focusing on is around communications as well for like conservation projects and conservationists. Mm-hmm. So, I did communications for 6-7 years at BirdLife International, and I found it a really useful skill in terms of how to promote, how to reach out to people, how to share ideas, build campaigns, that sort of stuff. And in conservation careers, we did a review last year looking at like what are the kind of transferable skills that employers look for across the sector. What are the things that if people got good quality training in and good skills within, will help them to be more employable for lots of different job types. And like the recurring patterns that came out were things like project management, really important, no matter which direction you take, makes sense. Fundraising as well is quite high up there. I guess whichever direction you're going to go in, and funding becomes important, particularly in charities, which kind of dominate the sector. But again, academia, which you guys both live and work within, funding's vitally important, good skill. And then another one is just communications. We found like 41% of jobs were asking explicitly for kind of communication skills. So we did a webinar a couple of weeks ago about that, and our friend and kind of communications coach here at Conservation Careers talked about communication skills, gave some good hints and tips. And in the last week, we're also promoting our course, Communications for Conservation Projects, which closed, it's now Monday. It closed yesterday on Sunday. So this is kind of just the aftermath, I guess, of that. And we're welcoming our second cohort on board. So that's been keeping us quite busy, really, kind of commsy stuff, I guess, the last couple of weeks. Commsy stuff, yeah. Which sounds kind of like nebulous, but it is super important. And actually, it probably leads us in actually to our topic of today, I think, quite neatly, really, which is all about making conservation better or having more impact. Like, us as a community, a global community of conservationists, whether you're professional or amateur, or however you describe yourselves, we're all here to try and help nature and wildlife to flourish and to bounce back, essentially. And actually, I hate the word conservation because it kind of suggests just like keeping everything the same. And we want to make things better, like enhancement, or I don't know, there must be a better word we could use as a movement. And just before this, I was kind of looking to see, well, why is this important, and what stats do we have about the state of biodiversity across the planet? Because I think most of us know we're kind of winning some battles, but to be honest, we're kind of losing a lot of them. I think if we're being super honest as a conservation society. So WWF, I just went to them, being one of the big, organizations out there. They have the Living Planet Report, which they publish every few years. Last year was the last one. They highlighted that 68% of all wildlife populations have declined in the last 30 or 40 years. So really since 1970, that's 50 years. On land, half of native forests have gone. On sea, 76% of fisheries are exploited or overfished, 76%. And in the air, 40%, so 4 in 10 of migratory birds are declining. They're just kind of just examples, I think, of some of the big stuff which as a community we're facing and we're trying to battle, So it kind of shows that we're doing some good stuff. I think we know we're doing some really good stuff, but we're just not winning. In fact, we're losing, really. And we need to do more of stuff. So really the topic of today is, what do we need to be better at as a kind of society of conservationists? What do we need to be more of? Or what do we need to do less of? What we rubbish at, we need to start and focus elsewhere on. Who wants to kind of pick that up as a theme and sort of share some ideas? Who wants to get going on it?
Just before jumping or getting in, I was thinking that these numbers you gave us are the things that we know. And the problem is that there are lots of wildlife that we are not tracking or studying, and it all seems or looks very, very grim. No, it's more than likely that all those numbers are also going down, especially with the insects or invertebrates that we don't pay much attention to. Oof.
Yeah, it's like the Donald Rumsfeld quote, isn't it? Which I always get wrong, but it's like the known knowns, the known unknowns, and the unknown unknowns are the things we just have no idea of. Yeah, what's going on that we've not measured or observed, right?
Only suspecting it.
Yeah. Yeah. It actually, in that light as well, I always sort of reflect that it's quite easy to kind of spot the first of something. So right here in the Northern Hemisphere, migratory birds are all coming back. So, the swallows and the swifts, we just started seeing swifts the last couple of weeks, which is lovely, and the first swift is always a moment like, boom, it's back. And now I suddenly see lots of them. Whereas like with extinctions and things that are disappearing, like the bigger picture stuff, it's very hard to say that was the last one. It's very hard to say when all the swifts go, you never quite know that moment when that was the last one. Because there still might be another one that kind of comes through. So like, when do you almost give up hope, and when do you, when do you focus your efforts elsewhere? Yeah, exactly. Proving a negative is very hard. Yeah, proving a positive, there it is. Right. Yeah, exactly that. Yeah. So bearing in mind that I think ultimately, we are kind of facing some pretty grim stats across the world. Like, what sort of, what do you reflect on when you kind of think about that? If you could kind of wave a magic wand and change the industry and change what we're trying to do, have you got any kind of suggestions or examples that you think we should be focusing more on?
Well, going from your talk about your course, I think communication is huge. And I entered this career as a scientist, not because I loved science, but really I loved wildlife and just natural areas. And I wanted to work on conservation. And I've kind of shifted over the years into focusing less on the animals and more on the people. Because when I think of my study species for my dissertation was African forest elephants, and I loved studying them, and I thought my research was really cool and important and everything, but they are just being poached so badly. Now they have been officially separated from the African savanna elephants by the IUCN, and they're critically endangered. And it's just all because of poaching. So many of the problems that you're talking about that lead to these species declines are really human problems. They're human caused. And for a species like the forest elephants, if we just stop the poaching, they'll be fine. Like, they have habitat for the most part. There's areas where they don't, but there's a lot of habitat for them. And elephants actually do bounce back pretty well from being hunted badly. So, I've just gotten more interested in like human psychology and how we can get people to care, because I've also realized through this career and just being an American here or a member of Planet Earth, that facts and data don't necessarily automatically work to change people's minds about things. So I became really interested in that, and working with the camera traps. I worked with kids, actually. I worked with getting our research into classrooms, and I learned just so much about how conservation ideas are formed. And it really starts with when you're a child. It's really hard to change adults' opinions about things. They have their values pretty set. So really, if you want people to care, like you have to reach them when they're kids and get them interested and connected to nature. And then when they grow up, they're more receptive to donating to charities or to voting a certain way. So I started completely with animals and like not wanting to have anything to do with people in this career. And now I've like come full circle. It's like, oh, it's like so much of it is about the people.
It's so important. What you just said about the children, it's often the only way to make the adults change, to talk to their children.
Yeah. And that's something we were surveying the kids, and something else we tried to study with one of our studies. It's still, I don't know if the results have been analyzed yet, but it's really hard to get at. But yeah, like seeing if the kids changed from looking at the camera traps and setting them up and stuff, and then seeing if the adults were influenced at all. We had some anecdotal evidence that, the kids would, like, some of the teachers would share the images on Google Drive, and the kids would come home and share the images and talk about the projects with their parents and stuff like that. So to see if, seeing coyotes on a camera trap, it causes them to have less fear of coyotes and to be more tolerant of them, and things like that. But yeah, you're right. That's definitely a way to get at adult values, is they're more receptive if they hear it from their children.
Yeah. It's funny, like as a parent of 3, I'm terrified of spiders. And Nando, we filmed in the spider house at London Zoo last year, just before COVID. And that's
I have proof of your scream.
A spider there. And I was like, all I could think about was that thing. And why is that? It's because my mum's scared of spiders, and then whenever she saw one as a kid, she would jump and go, spider. And then, that kind of, it's built into me. No matter how much I try and, use logic to kind of override that, it's still there, an instinct that I don't, I can't kind of get away from. But my kids, I've always been like, oh, look, spider, oh, lovely, oh, let's pick it up. I'm not picking the bloody thing up, but someone else can. I'm trying to encourage them. And they pick them up now. So there's definitely something about kind of starting young with these things and helping to kind of point that direction towards, being, I guess, call it wildlife friendly or not. Yeah. But yeah, comms is a big thing. I totally agree. Yeah. I think that, David Attenborough, I always think David Attenborough, because people think, communications and conservation. Well, the most important conservation on the planet, arguably, is Sir David Attenborough, and he's brought so many people into the movement, inspired so many of us, to kind of want to care about nature. And I think he said it, someone else might have said it, but he said something like, you won't care about things you don't love, essentially. Right. So love's like the first instinct. Grow a love for something, and then you might actually be able to change behaviors and connect that to action and activity and that sort of stuff. And a lot of communications and sort of branding work nowadays is more about selling the beauty and inspiration of nature, and then trying to attach that to action and activity off the back of it. And really, like Sir David, I think he's only really done the action bit, I think, in the last sort of 5-10 years. His career's all been about inspiring hope, beauty, wonder, awe. And he's done that brilliantly, but it's in the last few series that I've seen that he's done. It talks much more about the realities and what people can do, to help. The plastic pollution, Blue Planet, that was enormous.
That was a big one. It changed everything.
Yeah, show a problem, make people understand what it is and tell them what they can do about it. And then a global planet movement happened, really rapidly. I mean, none of us use plastic bags anymore, and and the supermarkets have, and it's changed.
Well, we business. Do here in the States, unfortunately.
Well, okay, but but governments across the globe have responded to that thing. So yeah,
they have. It's interesting though, because I feel like since COVID, and I might have seen some stories about this, I don't know if the data are solid, but like the plastic has resurged because, to protect human health. But here in the United States, we definitely still have a huge plastic problem. And then also with COVID, the restaurants not being able to have people, and like so many people wanted to save the restaurants, which I understand they're local. A lot of them are local businesses and stuff. So a lot of people were encouraging to do takeout. And, I was just thinking about like all the plastic waste. But no, you're right. It did cause like a big conversation, and like, like Kenya bans plastic bags. They don't have it anymore, but there's still a lot of work to be done in that area.
Yeah. I remember reading an interview of Sir David, where he was explaining that at the beginning he was hesitant to get into the telling people what to do or what can we do to fix or noticing the problems and talking about problems, because it was the most important part, or the most important ability we get with communication is leverage, is reaching more and more people. So he wanted to make sure that first he had the whole world's attention. And then finally it was a decision of the brand, I guess, to go and try change. But once they did it, this Blue Planet, the effect was massive.
Yeah.
Well, even scientists are like, they have that hesitancy to advocate because they don't want to have a bias. And I think now, or they don't want to perceive it as having a bias. And now I think it's reached the tipping point where it's like so much damage has been done. Like you just can't stay silent anymore.
Yeah. I spoke to, I think he's the chief exec of Fauna and Flora, director general, something like that, Mark Rose. Wonderful guy, really inspiring character, friend of Sir David. And his perspective on all this was that society has changed so much now that when he speaks to like business leaders, and he talks about like speaking to the CEO of Shell and these like really big organizations, and he says they're all on board now. They all want to not just greenwash and be seen, but they actually want to do something to help. That's a real genuine commitment from like big industries and governments. The groundswell has got to them. So you don't need to kind of sell the idea anymore. What they want to know more clearly is, what do you want us to do? Like, be super clear, almost in your messaging as conservationists to us. What do you want us to do about it? It's not just give you money. It's about what we can do as a business, as an industry, to really kind of change these problems and reconnect. So Mark Rose's perspective was like, we need to be clear in what we're asking of businesses and governments, and have that kind of clear messaging to make that difference. And he also feels like the timing is really good right now. And this was pre-COVID, so nothing to do with COVID when I was talking to him, but even more so now. I think that people talking about the green recovery post-COVID, investing more in this sort of kind of sustainable area, and that it is a vote winner now. That people are demanding this. Extinction Rebellion's a big movement here, certainly in the UK. I'm sure it is more global as well. Greta Thunberg, people like that, kind of showing the way and people following that. So he thinks the moment's now. People are listening, governments are listening. We just need to kind of tell people, what is it you want to do? We sort of got that groundswell thing.
I really love that interview with you, with Mark Rose. And another very interesting thing he mentioned is that perhaps the message had to be narrow, and first we should focus on maybe two aims or just one aim. I think he mentioned the ocean, like focus first all our efforts in the ocean and make, in order to make this message clear. That which is what, maybe there are too many little battles, and maybe we should just leave it very, very clear. This is the most urgent, and that will help all the companies and economies.
That's what plastic did, wasn't it? I mean, really, taking plastic out of the oceans is a nice thing and a good thing to do, but there's still way more to be done out there in the world. So, like, what are these things which, as a society, we can focus on? And we have the Convention on Biological Diversity, the CBD, which has its targets, and Sustainable Development Goals. We have these kind of big overarching stuff. But, could we turn that into something that's tangible, that people really understand, and that people on an individual level, day to day, can do something about? I don't take plastic bags out anymore. Like, what else could we be doing? Switching to green or energy, or I don't know. Like, energy is a big thing. Having fewer kids will probably help.
That's the biggest thing that you can do. And I wrote a blog post about climate change because there's this one paper that came out about like the biggest thing that you can do as an individual for to reduce your impact on climate change. And in my opinion, climate change is the biggest issue because it affects everything. It affects every single species on Earth. And even like you're talking about or conservation being a strange word to use sometimes. Well, there's an article out recently about national parks here that like the managers are having to make decisions about what species to save with climate change because inherently the decisions they make are going to benefit some species and not benefit other species. So we can't even like be like at the status quo. We're now having to figure out how to navigate this this new future. But yeah, having fewer kids is and ideally no kids, but I know that's not realistic for a lot of people. Here in the US, our census reported that it is going down, that that people are not having as many kids, and that's something that a lot of organizations don't like to talk about too. Like if you go to the nonprofits, the conservation nonprofits, and they'll talk about like what you can do about climate change. They never talk about that because it's a touchy subject.
Yeah.
It's also tricky thinking of the cascade effects. What happens when the new generation, I mean, when we don't have a workforce, for example, or when we are all older and there is not enough people to, I don't know, I'm thinking from the top of my head that having fewer kids could have effects in the whole economy or the whole the world that we cannot foresee.
It's a big thing, just like state pensions looking after these old people, right? The young people aren't generating the tax to pay for them. So it's a bit of as they're getting older and there's more of them. Yeah. Again, the other thing that links to this for me is like actually, and it's less about what conservationists can do, but more about what we can do personally. Is like eat less meat. I eat meat, and so I'm not, saying everyone should do something that I don't do, but eating meat, demands an awful lot of energy and resources and water and everything else from the planet, and it's actually healthier not to. It's almost like a simple switch, that would be better for you and better for the planet. Easy to do, hard to say no to a burger when you go to a restaurant, though. I know that. So.
Yeah, I totally agree. And I think that's a message that we need to amplify more. I think it's an easy message, but it's maybe a hard sell. And I think that I kind of come from an animal rightsy background. Like I was a vegetarian for a long time. And I do think that like the word vegan is very triggering for a lot of people because of the way people make you feel guilty for eating animals and things like that. So again, like taking the messaging of that and like you said, not necessarily becoming a vegan, but become more plant-based and, give up meat once a week or do only one meal a day with meat or something like that. Or even where you buy your meat from, buy it from a local farm rather than the factory farm. That there's a huge difference in the impacts of climate just from that.
It adds up, doesn't it? It really adds up. Even on an individual level, it must add up. If you multiply that out to a population, and that's a trend that's happening anyway. More plant-based, positive, and maybe something simple that people can do. Yeah,
or crossing fingers for the lab-grown meat. That could change a lot, and also this protein coming from invertebrates. This could help a lot too.
Yeah, we were doing a shopping order last night because we're going on holiday on Friday. My wife accidentally put ogg rather than egg into the supermarket shopping basket, and there are vegetarian eggs called oggs. Apparently, they existed. I was like, what, do you crack them? We need to figure it out.
They could have missed that step.
Yeah. So what other stuff should we be thinking about as kind of conservationists? Let me chuck an example out because it's something that I think I found quite interesting too. And again, it links to another conversation in the same building as Mark Rose with a guy who runs something called Conservation Evidence. So I spoke to Bill Sutherland, Professor Bill at University of Cambridge, and he has this whole movement and team and website and other channels, things that he produces around And he put it as simply as possible, and I still love it. He said, we need to do more of what's working and less of what's not been proven to work. So like follow the proof, follow the
80-20.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah. So find the things that are really working and have been proven to work through studies and meta-analysis and looking at lots of different studies that all point in the same direction and give you some kind of scientific confidence, like this thing been proven to work. Do more of that. And if it's not been proven to work, stop doing it, because some of conservation is just intuition and culture and things we've been doing for years because we've always done them this way, and we've not really stood back and done an analysis and a study of it. And there are some things we could drop as a movement, and that to me was a real that makes total sense. And he made the analogy of like medicine, because you wouldn't take medicine unless it's proven to work, until the trials have been done and all the boxes have been ticked, then you invest in that thing, COVID vaccines or whatever right nowadays. The same theory we should apply to conservation. And I think that's totally right, actually. And it links to something for me, which is like around like almost like return of investment. If we've got a limited pot we're investing into conservation activities, or if we were all very wealthy donors that were the Bill Gates of the world and we were throwing money at conservation, you want to make sure you put it in the place where it's really going to work and we're not wasting that investment whatsoever. So like which aspects of what we do as a conservation movement are inherently really really economic. They make sense. If you've got 100 million, if you put it here, you save this many species, habitat, sites, area, whatever you want to measure. Whereas here, it might save a lot more, a lot less. Like just looking at it from that investor perspective and following the evidence, I think could be quite a valuable thing for the movement.
What is clear that will work with humans is to align the interest and the incentives of conservation with the economical incentives of humans. Or for example, I heard in Alex Friedman podcast. They were mentioning the example of Elon Musk with Tesla. Like he has managed to make the idea of an electric car, which before used to be like something for, I don't know, people hugging trees, the rich people will buy an electric car. Now having this electric car is cool, and everybody, all the rich people with the money want a Tesla. So he managed to align the interest of people that not necessarily care about the environment, or they might, but the interest is to have a nice car, and a true necessity, which is to stop using oil or fuels that are not renewable. And using this as an example, I was telling you, Nick, before we started recording this morning, we started the initial stages of planning a conference later this autumn, trying to collect this kind of examples. Like how can we improve conservation, aligning our interests and doing good with what already is wanted in society. And for example, in urban environments, what can we do? Or I read about an example of a wine box that was designed in wood and keeping the wine bottles inside. And then when you drink all the wine, you turn around this wine box and all of a sudden it's a nest box for bats.
Nice.
And then this apart from driving hopefully more sales for the company, they could be used, for example, in collaboration with city halls or regions to control the Nile virus through mosquitoes in southern Spain, for example. And then you are connecting all the dots so that everybody is getting a win. And that way, I think we could push conservation much more than just using donations or this framework that is based on charity.
I agree. I think that like I say we mean like scientists have And conservationists, we've kind of like demonized corporations as the enemy. And I totally get it. They've done, tons of environmental destruction, and it's really easy to do that. But I think we need to accept that they're here. They have a big influence on the environment, and we really need to work with them. And I think there's a hesitancy because like we don't want to have our reputation ruined, or also like because they're doing these bad things that like we don't want to seem like we're endorsing it. Like I think about sustainable palm oil. I had a lot of criticism for writing about sustainable palm oil, and I understand that there's like so many problems with it. But at the same time, the Roundtable on Sustainable Palm Oil, they're working with these corporations and they have a voice and they're working to make things better. Whereas if you're just saying boycott palm oil, you're not having a voice in that, and the corporations are just doing what they want anyway. And palm oil is just like such a gigantic product that it's unlikely it's going to go away. So it's about having a voice working with those people. I think when you talked about like what I am interested in hearing about like what we should drop, because I was trying to think of that, and I was thinking of a couple of things. So I think I don't know, this is like the way I've kind of historically viewed conservation is it's kind of like Western scientists, like what I did, traveling abroad to like these faraway places and preserving these faraway species and everything. And I think we need to shift away from that and instead increase diversity in this field and and this is diversity all over, get like local communities to be not only advocates, but scientists and practitioners in those places. So it's not like, us fighting for elephants in Gabon. It's the people there and the people studying them. So that sense of ownership and that sense of pride and get for them to understand the worth of those animals and the value that they have to their economics, honestly. So I think that's something we also we need to change, and just figure out how we can empower more people and work in our local communities, and also stop seeing the separation between people and nature. Like here in the United States, the national park model was so big, and it's really important. Protected areas, they protect a lot of species, and they're important. Like safety areas for a lot of species, but we also have to, again, look to our local communities and even in suburbia and urban areas and think, what can we do here to increase wildlife? And even doing things like planting native plants in cities can really have an impact and attract important pollinators. So I think that's something that we need to stop doing and start doing as well.
Yeah, I love that. Yeah. And something I think you both touched on there, something really close to probably all our hearts, I think, really is like just like around sort of the innovation bit as well. Like what can we do that? So like, Stephanie is talking about almost like, I guess, sort of parachuting conservation in from afar, as opposed to building it up from the grassroots, locally. In order for that to happen, usually there needs to be some sort of economic model around that. If people are overfishing their lake to earn an income and look after their families, well, what can we do that would incentivize them to not overfish? What other alternative livelihoods or other economic things like tourism or something else? We need more innovative thinking, like the bat box, wine box type, ideas. And there's so much within that space I think we can be doing more of. And
I read this morning about a new cryptocurrency called green coin or something like that.
Right.
It was in a list of examples like this, like what we are talking of, these aligning incentives, and just by buying this coin and using it for transactions, you were somehow raising money to protect a region in Africa. And I mean, if I'm gonna do it anyway, even though I'm not young anymore. But if I were young, I would start looking into these cryptocurrencies, these crypto smart contracts. All of this is gonna be huge into making the bureaucracy ball a bit smaller. Like because you are removing the middleman, and then this could save a lot of energy and make everything faster, like collaboration between countries and without having to go with permits, or what Stephanie you were saying before, like making community-based conservation much easier. If you don't have to go through a circle of, I don't know, middle countries or banks, or asking for a loan to create a pond in your back garden in Namibia. All of this, I think, is going to open a new, very big new world of doing things faster. Once we solve the other problem of people using lots of energy to generate these bitcoins and this cryptocurrency.
And traditionally, we're not very good at that, I don't think, conservationists, in looking at new economic models and talking to finance and corporations. And that's not where the movements come from. But like, I'm thinking about like carbon credits and stuff as you're speaking, and could we use things like carbon? I think the idea is, to kind of try and conserve areas of the world that still has good carbon stocks in perpetuity by sort of buying credits and sharing revenue back with them to look after them. So rather than if you had a forest in wherever it might be, Gabon, going with like the recent example, can we make the value of it more to preserve it for its carbon value into the future, rather than chopping it down now for the timber? Like, it's a long-term value far greater than the short-term value of just chopping it down right now. If you can get that economic model figured out, things will stay and they will thrive. But it takes some really innovative thinking that we're not very good at, and we're much better to go to the financiers of the world and the economists of the world and say, how can we do this? Is cryptocurrency the way forwards?
Yeah, I agree with you. And like trying to think of like new partners to work with, like going back to the Gabon example, like there's a lot of oil concessions there, which do have negative effects on animals. But in this one particular, it was actually like a really safe corridor for elephants, because they heavily patrolled it. There was like one road going through it, and they made sure like they knew who was going in and who was going out. So there was like no poaching in that area. So it doesn't have to be incompatible with conservation. And I think you're so right. Like instead of just relying on government funding and charity money, like seeing if you can start these discussions with companies and even technology as well. Like I've talked to some people where like we're talking about cutting edge technology and conservation, and they're like, this is like why can't you guys do better? It's like, well, yeah, we're not working with those people. And so maybe just like starting those dialogues with budding companies and trying to create these unique partnerships.
Yeah, I mean, like satellite imagery and what we could do with that. There was years ago, I listened to, again, I think it was a podcast or maybe it was a TV thing, where they were talking about the problem of unexploded bombs in Iraq, back in the Iraq War, and how, guys will be out on patrol and they'd obviously come across a bomb and there'd be major issues, but they wanted to know, well, who was planting them? Can we trace this back to the people who were putting them there? And these guys from MIT in the States kind of sitting around a bar, and they came up with this idea of, if we were constantly recording video footage from the skies, like 24/7 over the main areas we were interested in, Baghdad or wherever, what we can do actually is go back to when, that bomb exploded, and then rewind the clock and see, well, who was there? What did they do? Like, rewind it, follow them back to where they went and follow them back to their house. And then from that, you can actually start to kind of map out the sort of the networks of individuals, if you like, of, who you want to kind of focus in on. And it sort of revolutionized a lot of this stuff. They can actually go to the house and sort of replay history. The sorts of things we could do in conservation in terms of, seeing what impacts they're having where the poachers are for elephants, which villages they came from. Can we go in and start working with them? And also like tracking satellite imagery, not over like, recent time, but over years and years, and actually almost see changes happening in sort of real time, like gamifying. I've seen some things around that. So you are shown an image of the world and it asks you, is it forest or lake or savanna or something else? You sort of categorize it. And through getting people to do that, and algorithms nowadays can do that anyway, it allows you to sort of trigger and say, well, actually, hang on, there's a lot of rapid change happening in this area. You can focus our energies on this. and we should get people into the area quite rapidly, whether that's the Amazon or something else, some area we're really interested in. There must be loads of great examples of this happening outside our industry that we can kind of bring in. And it's super exciting if we can sort of get it right and harness it. I mean, your work's been funded with, you mentioned Microsoft, was it, Nando, and this sort of sort of interest in some of this sort of space. And I know they are sort of funding this sort of stuff and connecting in. But yeah, we could do a lot more if we're, again, partnership building. Yeah.
When you mentioned before Ologies, the podcast, I remember an episode where I don't remember the exact person, but he was an engineer that got a bit bored of, as it happens, of working in NASA. And then he wanted to do something better and with more impact in, I don't know, improving the world. And then he created this company that helps conservationists use technology a bit better. And then he flies around and going to the places that need him, and then designs gadgets or better ways to improve technology for conservation. And I think this links with our starting point, communication, because if we talk to engineers and tell them, oh, look, I have this problem. Yeah. The engineer mind usually goes, oh, this is a nice problem to solve. Let's work together. And then we create these new possibilities. I think talking to people always solve a lot of problems.
Yeah. Sorry, go on.
Oh, it's okay. And also with social media and all these platforms allowing for connections too. Like I know with eMammal, we have we've done things like we reached out to the maker community and like created challenges for them, and people are really eager and excited to help. They want to use their knowledge, and they're interested in problem solving these challenges, and they want to use it for good. So it gives them like a reason to create, I don't know, a new app or code something to be able to help wildlife.
Yeah, that's so cool. And it's a huge movement, and like creative technology or creative technologist is a job title nowadays. People who come and do this for a living. Yeah. Well, maybe that's a good point for us to go through in terms of our discussions. I feel like it's sort of group therapy. I always feel like I sort of got some stuff off my chest through our little chats. I really enjoy them. But I know we're up on time almost too, and we have other things to go to in sort of 5-10 minutes time. So leaving us a little bit of space then for wrapping up on our career tips. We sort of the structure is we're sort of sharing what we're doing, going through a topic, and then sharing a quick tip for the audience who are listening if they're looking to kind of kickstart their career or move along within their career if they're already professional conservationists. Have you guys got any thoughts or a quick tip you'd like to share? And the challenge here is to remember what we've already said in the previous 2 episodes going forward. So I'm going to keep my own notes. That's my own tip to myself.
Maybe we need to do a data set.
Yes, exactly. Yeah.
Keep an Excel file. Stephanie gave me an idea for a tip. So I'm going to
don't steal my idea. Because I was going to go off of what I was saying, but go ahead. You should do yours.
Oh, no. Then you start. Then you start.
No, go ahead. I want to hear what yours is, and then I can always come up with another one.
I mean, I really like what you did of connecting with your audience and trying to find what problems they have. And I think it can be turned around. And if you are starting out and you are thinking the same.
I don't know. Let me see where it goes.
If you are starting out and you want to get more contacts and maybe more visibility and build your brand, a very, very neat idea is to do what the Stephanie just did. You just go around and ask maybe 3 or 4 questions to different people you follow or you admire, or try to get questions from people that are working in what you want to work on, and then collect all these questions and write your own post or record your own video and post it out there. This is what I have learned after interviewing. How many did you do? 50, I think, is too many for a video. But yeah, something like that, I think, could be super helpful to connect with people, to learn a lot of interesting tips, and to feel and to get more like flexible and relax in this medium.
Yeah, I guess the thing I notice is like it makes you like an influencer as well, as someone who's really interested and knowledgeable within a certain space, because you've collected information from other people who have it and then sort of almost attached it to yourself. Yeah, that's great. I love
Information
that.
hub.
Yeah.
So my tip is different, so that's good.
Yes.
Excellent.
No, yours is very good. I totally agree with that, and I encourage people to just like reach out to people who have the job that they want and send them a quick email and asking if you can talk to them for 15 minutes to answer some questions about their job. But my tip is to put yourself out there and make yourself searchable on the internet, and at the very least have a LinkedIn bio. But eventually your own webpage is probably a good idea to have, but have a LinkedIn bio and start making those connections. And then honestly, join Twitter too. I think Twitter is really great for your career. And a lot of people shy away from it because they are scared of putting themselves out there, or maybe they're not interested in science communication. But even if you're not, it's just great for meeting people, networking, and finding out information. So if you're hesitant to join, you can at least join and just kind of like watch people. You don't have to tweet right away, but you can like watch and see what's going on before you figure out what you're going to tweet about.
Yeah,
Totally.
that's great. Yeah. I like that. I like that a lot. And I don't use Twitter so much nowadays, but back in the day I did, and I found it really useful in terms of connecting to people and networking.
It's really the place for scientists. Like I'm part of different communities, like dealing with blogging and podcasting and stuff. And they like do not really use Twitter, but like scientists are really on Twitter. That's where a lot of interactions happen.
Right. Yeah. Right. Cool. Final tip then from my side would be, what I've got written down here, and I'm going to stick with it for now, but I might build off it, is a really simple one. It's just say yes to stuff. It's about sort of making opportunities and being open.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, I don't know if you've seen the film like Yes Man in the book and stuff, and it's just too extreme. But I think if you just say yes, you're amazed where it kind of leads you and what opportunities might happen. So just being open, I think, in the early stage of your career is really important. And when you get to the point where you say no to stuff, then you're kind of making it, because you've got enough opportunities and you're busy enough, and then you're in control. But when you're sort of hustling and trying to make things happen, I think saying yes is probably a really firm sort of starting point. Yeah. And I got to hold my next tip for the next one, so I won't struggle. That's fine. But I'll write it down.
I will have to listen to the podcast again to remember.
Yes, exactly. Yeah. Well, guys, honestly, I always enjoy these chats. So thank you very much for sort of sharing your precious time and your knowledge and your experience with us.
Thank you
as
for
always.
the chance.
If people want to find out more, we always share show notes and links in the notes. But if people are just listening, Nando, where should we send them? How can people find out more about you?
Well, we were saying Twitter, so just follow me on Twitter on Bioblogger.
Bioblogger, brilliant. And Stephanie?
You can follow me on Twitter at Fancy Scientist, and all my stuff is Fancy Scientist. If you Google it, you'll find me in my various social media channels.
Fab. Well, thanks again, guys, for connecting. We'll circle back in probably about a month's time, I guess, and we'll have our next group therapy session. Topic to be decided.
Looking forward to it.
Maybe that can be the title: group therapy.
Group therapy.
Conservation therapy.
Conservation therapy. That's good.
I'm liking it.
Yeah. All right. Thanks, guys. You guys take care. Thanks again for your time.
Bye. Thank you.
Signing off. Bye-bye.
Okay. Well, I hope you enjoyed that, everyone. If you did, then please do hit the subscribe button to get notified of new episodes as they drop. And also please give us a rating or a review, because it really helps us to get in front of more people. Now, if you want our help to get clear and get started and get hired as a professional conservationist, I recommend you enroll in our free online training program, exploring how to get a conservation job. So if you're a student, a job seeker, or a career switcher, you'll learn the golden rule about how to get started, the key mistakes to avoid, and also we'll answer your biggest questions. You can check that out at conservation-careers.com/free. See you soon.